I have to say congratulations on Chief of Station. It's an action-packed spy thriller, isn't it?
It is. It is.
And Aaron Eckhart, we don't think of him, in playing really tight action roles. We think of him more, I think, as a president or somebody who's forced into action. But this guy is at the top of his game, isn't he?
He's really, really good. He's a force of nature, incredibly physically powerful, intellectually very, very questioning, and the other actors, describe him as intense, which I think is a really good word. Keeps everyone on their toes. Everyone loves working with him because he brings out the best in people, including me. He's so disciplined, Tony. He gets up very, very early every day, like 4:30, I think, something like that. He's in bed by 8. The work is tantamount to him. Everything is about being as best as it possibly can be. And I really enjoyed working with him. I'm doing another film with him right now, and we've collaborated on this one a lot more than we did on Chief of Station. I flew to Montana and wrote with him on this one. But he's fab. He's just a great actor to work with. For me, it's all about collaboration. And on this one, I got very lucky with the cast, with Olga Kurylenko, who I love, Alex Pettyfer, who I hadn't worked with before, but I hope to work with again, and Nick Moran, who I worked with a few times, who I'm an immense fan of, and who saved me so many times with difficult characters, making them believable and interesting and poignant. So yes, it was wonderful working with Aaron, but the whole cast was very good as well.
And as you said, you worked with Olga many times. Is there a shorthand between you two now?
I understand enough about Olga to really enjoy working with her. She's a mysterious person. She has an immense amount of attributes that I can't understand from where I am. The ability to bring so much to a small piece of dialogue, to a small physical gesture or action. She's so wonderful, and I don't quite understand her technique. It's almost bordering on witchcraft. It's amazing, and it's the most intensely exciting thing to work with her and to watch that happen. She will come to me once in a while and say, I'm having trouble with this, and she'll work it out with me, and I'll be a sounding board for her. But to be honest, between the two of us, I don't really help very much. I listen and I let her find her way to the answer. It's really exciting working with actors like that. Aaron has a different technique. He does want answers. He does want collaboration, but quite often we'll talk for half an hour about the mountains and climbing and the outdoors, and that will be the way that he finds his way to how to perform that particular line of dialogue in the scene. We won't talk about that line of dialogue in the scene, for example. And other times he won't like something, and he'll say the night before, you just have to come up with something better. Go and do something better for me, Jesse. And I'll go home and you're like, oh my God. and that challenge brings something out of you. And I've written 40 different versions of it. You tone it down. I don't want to make him read all of them. You get it down to 2 or 3, and then you get it down to the one. You go, oh my, this is the one. And I take it in the next morning. He's like, that's it. You got it. And that's the line that works, and it works well in there. And so, different ways of working with different actors, but it's so exciting. The cast on this one was really, really fun to work with. And I think they made Chief of Station just that little bit better than what it was intended to be, which was a sort of a B movie filler. And I must raise that. And they do say the best movies are simply the B movies made well.
Well, it's really, you've got to be able to connect with the audience on a couple of different levels. And when you're doing a spy thriller, I mean, this is a really hard genre to kind of, because everybody thinks it's been done. But it hasn't. It's all about the connections that you have with the people, the characters in it, and how they relate to your audience. And this was, everybody could relate. And that's what I want to see in a movie, where you're not going, well, this guy, I don't get him. You get every character.
Thank you, Tony. That's a lovely thing to say. And that's all down to the cast. I wish I could take some. The one thing, I'll touch back to the first part of your statement because it's quite profound, and I'm glad you cottoned onto that, is that this particular genre, if you only took the Bond movies, has been done, let alone The Spy Who Came In From the Cold or Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, the Smiley, series, or any of these. John le Carre. If you only took the Bond series, it's pretty much covered every imaginable avenue of interest for a espionage movie. So the challenge is enormous. The part that I enjoyed, I do apologize. Let me just. The part that I enjoyed was trying to figure out a spin to put on this that I felt was a little more original. And that, for me, was what I've been reading a lot. I read an awful lot about espionage. I find it very interesting. It's a pet hobby of mine. The amazing thing that's happening now in the espionage community is that we're reverting away from cellular and cell phone and internet and sort of electronic espionage, and we're going back to the Stone Age, so to speak. And we touch on this a little bit at the beginning of Chief of Station with the old school handover, which has now become, you know, fashionable again. All of these techniques that were refined from the Civil War through to Napoleonic times, through First World War, Second World War, these techniques of espionage are coming back because a 17-year-old in China can, you know, who's trained in it, has learned how to eavesdrop on a cellular conversation at the highest NSA level. So if you want to have that conversation confidentially now, you have to go back to the old school way of doing it. And so they're digging up guys, older spies, older books and techniques on how to do this and bringing it back. And I thought that was something really, really interesting. I wish I could have touched on it more, but obviously we had the framework of a script that we had to adhere to already written. But for me, I found that tantalizing and exciting, and it's like, you know, even Daniel Bernhardt's character, who was a KGB warrior during the Cold War, these guys were out of work for the longest time. They was, you know, they didn't have anything to do. You know, Glasnost and you know, etc. And peacetime, you know, they worked as international, you know, mercenaries or advisors. But now they're being brought back in because we need them again. And what was scary for me just recently was, you know, I researched a event that happened when a KGB officer, a Russian officer in Libya, was kidnapped, and they sent back, you know, they said we're gonna kill him unless you know, release so and so. So the KGB went and kidnapped you know, the PLO or the terrorist's family, and they cut off an ear and said, here's an ear, we're going to send back body parts until you return our Russian officer, who was returned 4 days later. Wow. You know, as the CIA prisoner who was kept for 6 years. You know, now he uses that as a way of justifying the way the Russians do business and how they are going to do it again. The terrifying thing was this last month with the terrorist in Russia, the first thing they did to him was chop his ear off. And he's doing the news conference from, you know, they're showing shots from the trial. And he's got his ear bandaged up because they took it off and made him eat it, you know. And this is 21st century now. So these techniques and these bad guys that we remember, you and I, younger people don't, yep, from the 70s, early 80s and the 60s, these guys are coming back, and those techniques are coming back. And I found that interesting, and I tried to play that a little bit in Chief of Station. Yeah. I certainly don't influence anyone at all. I'm the furthest thing from a violent person. I wouldn't want anyone harmed because of my movie, but it is interesting how a lot of these techniques and, you know, and scenarios are unfortunately very prescient, you know.
Yeah, I think it is kind of a throwback to those spy films of I'm not saying Bond, because Bond became a comic book, but the real spy films that we enjoyed as kids were all hands-on. It was all old school spying, and you know, with technology you get lazy, you know, and a lot of stuff slips through. So this person-to-person thing that you've rebirthed, you know, where spies kind of knew each other, you know, and played off of that as well.
They likely know each other better than they know their own comrades because they've studied each other, which I find very interesting as well. But yeah, it's fascinating. I you know, my daughters were playing with my stuff and they found a compass. They said, "What's this, Dad?" I said, "That's a compass that tells you what's north and east and south." And they're like, "Why do you need that? You have a cell phone." It's like, well, what happens if the cell phone goes? If something, you know, it's generation. You know, you know, and every year we become more reliant and you know, unable to operate with, you know, the analog ways anymore, and I think it's very dangerous. I think
Yeah.
we're losing touch with our foundations. I think everyone should work on a farm and spend a year without a cell phone, without the internet, and just embed themselves in what we are as a species and forget all this sort of help.
Yeah.
It is interesting.
We really don't know what to do when the light switch goes off. We're in panic.
Very easy.
In our final moments we have, what do you think audiences are going to take away from Chief of Station?
I hope they're entertained. I hope they get to see Aaron Eckhart in a way that is compelling and exciting. And I hope they go, wow, I want to see a sequel to this movie at the end of it, because I sure anything would love to bring Aaron, Olga, and Pettifer back and do a second one of these. I think we could go even bigger. I don't want to shoot in a cold country again, because that was just a little bit too much for me by the end of it. So cold. But I think I'd like to see what these guys did with another assignment, another challenge.
There's a lot happening in Hawaii, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I could see this as a mini series too. I mean, it blew me away, and the action sequences. And I want to point out and I don't want to give anything away, but I think it's even in the trailer, the explosion in a cafe. I mean, wow. I've seen explosions done, but this was really meticulously done. It looked really real.
Yeah, it's 2-minute take. Did you watch that with all of the extras? So over 100 stunt guys and explosion blowing up. There was a film called Children of Men where they did a single take with the explosion going off behind Clive Owen in that. And I've always thought that was a really smart way of doing it. And I couldn't quite work out why it affected me so viscerally. And I realized there's no cuts, in that particular. So you see him go into the shop, you come out of the shop, and then he walks forward and the bomb goes off behind him. And so we found 2 places where Aaron could stand and the explosion would explode past him because he'd be covered by a concrete barricade. And we had the special effects guys watching, dressed in, an evening gown on camera, because obviously we saw everything because it was a long single shot. And when they saw that Aaron and the actress, Letitia Edo, who plays his wife, she had to go behind the explosion, which was a directional one. So she was safe the moment she went there. And Aaron hid behind the concrete wall and was safe there. They could trigger the bomb, which was filled with cork and but particulate, but that can still hurt you if you're too close to it. And he was very, very close. But all the stunt guys that were there actually got hit by this, and that was fine. They're stuntmen; they're okay to get hit by that. They're also angled away from the main blast, but from where the camera was, it looked like it enveloped him, and I found that really exciting. Once I had we had to find the location, then we found the location, we had to rework it and make it work. But the Hungarian crew were wonderful. The stunt performers were terrific. I got to work with Gabor Perok again, who is a legend there, who I'd worked with on Total Recall and Cutthroat Island and other films. So it was nice. He came in and he actually plays the waiter. So, but it was quite a shot, and I'm so glad you noticed that. It was
I want other people to notice it, because it's a beautiful, beautiful moment. It reminded me of something that maybe Orson Welles would have filmed, like in Touch of Evil, or it just works so well.
That is the biggest compliment you can pay to a director. The most lovely thing for you to say, and I'm so glad you noticed that, and that marks you a notch above everyone else that I've spoken to.
Thank you.
So thank you very much, Tony.
I would love you to consider doing a remake of the film Topkapi.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of my favorite movies, and it just needs to be updated and redone.
I will relook at that film and have a think about that. But yes, I'm so glad you noticed that. It also required an awful lot of cojones on the part of Aaron to actually do that, because he had to walk past the explosives pointing right at you, and you can see they're like great big sort of mouths, 4 of them all lined up, and he had to walk right past them all, stand in front of it, and then just as he stepped behind the concrete, they set it off. And obviously the quicker that him getting to cover and the trigger being fired happened, the better. So it was really quite hairy. So.
Well, and kudos to your extras too, and everybody in that scene, because they just, to be able to do that and focus that hard, even on the, on the street people, was just a beautiful piece of cinematography. It should be that piece should be in schools to show how to do it.
Yeah, it's a hairy one. I wouldn't want anyone copying it, because it's quite, walking a knife edge between, but it worked out well. I think we had 8 or false starts. It got so late. It was 3 or 4 in the morning. It was so cold that the actors, Aaron and Letitia's mouths were getting cold. So they were having trouble with the dialogue because they're, yeah, as you do when it gets very cold. And we fumbled it just before the bomb went. She had one line and she said the wrong line. It's like, oh my gosh, and we had to go back. And it was, by the time it went, and then we're worried about the sun coming up now. And so it was exciting, but when it worked, it worked.
Jesse, I am always glad to talk with you, and we should just get together for a cup of coffee when you're not so busy, and talk movies, because I would love just to pick your brain for a while.
I would enjoy that very much, Tony. Thank you for your time and thank you for having me on it. Thank you for your support. It's great.
Always, always, and thank you for this film. It's terrific.